Hi, my name is Glenn, and I'm here to do the accent tag thing because I want to do a Canadian accent. And I was especially driven to do this when I saw on the internet a young girl, well, she was a teenager, very good looking, so she got a lot of hits, but her accent was not a typical Canadian one. I think that she was probably from near Windsor way, near Detroit, because she spoke very American-like. To me, it sounded like an American accent. She said things like, accent tag, had these very open, very long A's that very long, held for a long time, these short A's that were held for a very long time. And she said Canada for the name of our country. Our country is not Canada, it's Canada, and most Canadians would say Canada. Canada is really the way an American says Canada, so don't believe her accent, it's not typical. Mine is typical. I believe I have the most typical of Canadian accents, at least typical of Canadian urban accents. We really sound the same, Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto. I can't tell people from these different cities. I'm from Toronto, we say Toronto, even though we say Toronto to foreigners, but to each other we say Toronto, or to other Canadians. You can tell somebody from Montreal and Ottawa, though, from somebody from Toronto or Vancouver, because they say carry and marry for C-A-R-R-Y, M-A-R-R-Y. They say carry, marry. We say carry and marry. But that's the only difference. Now, I'm supposed to pronounce a bunch of words here. So, here goes. Ant, that's A-U-N-T. Ant, roof, root, wash, oil, theater, iron, salmon, caramel, fire, water, sure, data, sometimes I say data, ruin, crayon, New Orleans. Now I said New Orleans before I ever went there, but I know there they say New Orleans, but now I say New Orleans. Pecan, both, again, probably, spitting image, Alabama, lawyer, coupon, mayonnaise, syrup, pajamas, cot, that's C-A-U-G-H-T. I pronounce it the same as cot, C-O-T. Naturally, aluminum, envelope. In Canada, we tend to say envelope rather than envelope, which I think is just a French influence. Now, the problem with these words is that it doesn't distinguish one of the main distinguishing features of English, which is the rhotic or non-rhotic R. That's R-H-O-T-I-C. That describes whether you pronounce the R on the end of a word like father or car. So non-rhotic is father or ka, and rhotic is father and car. In Canada, everybody has a rhotic R. In the United States, almost everybody, there are certain areas where they have a non-rhotic R. And African Americans have a non-rhotic R for the most part. So someone has suggested adding the following words, so then you hear the rhotic or non-rhotic R. Tiger, hair, doorknob, fever, spider, demeanor, leisure. Someone else also suggested adding ask, because some people say axe. And I would suggest also the word carry, because some people say carry and then some people say carry. So most Canadians say carry, as do Americans. I would suggest we add the following words, though, to distinguish between Canadian and American speech. So far, everything that I've said so far would be pronounced the same way by somebody from Phoenix. They sound very Canadian in Phoenix. Also, I've noticed in Seattle, Detroit suburbs, wealthier ones, and the middle of Connecticut. They sound very Canadian except for the out and about. So I've added just a few words that distinguish between an American and a Canadian. So the first one is sorry. Now, Canadians under 30 will say sorry, but they learned that on Sesame Street. Unfortunately, Sesame Street has really influenced a lot of Canadian speech. But Canadians over 30 will say sorry. Tomorrow, out and about. Note that I'm saying out and about, not oot and a boot. No Canadian says oot in a boot, although Americans claim that we say oot in a boot. Now listen, you can hear the difference. About, a boot. Nobody says a boot. We all say about. And finally, the sun shone. Americans say the sun shone. That's why it's good to have this, the sun shone in there, because aside from the States, everybody in the English-speaking word says shone, not shone. And then they have some questions here. What is it called when you throw toilet paper on a house? I have never heard of this. I've never seen anyone do it. I didn't know there was a word for it. What is the bug that when you touch it, it curls into a ball? I know what they're talking about. I have no word for that bug. What is the bubbly carbonated drink called? It's called pop, of course. What do you call gym shoes? I would call them running shoes. What do you say to address a group of people? Here they mean whether you say you, yous, y'all, you guys. Here I would say you guys. I think most Canadians would say you guys. What do you call a kind of spider that has an oval-shaped body and extremely long legs? That's a daddy long legs. What do you call your grandparents? I called my one grandmother Nana and the other one grandmother in New Brunswick, because we didn't see her very much. She was in New Brunswick. My grandfathers, I never had any grandfathers since I've been alive, so I didn't have a word for them. What do you call the wheeled contraption in which you carry groceries at the supermarket? That's a shopping cart, surely. And what do you call it when rain falls when the sun is shining? I suspect that's called a sun shower, but I don't really know. I've never heard anyone talk about that. What is the thing you change the TV channel with? I would call it a remote or a remote control. And what do you call, I'm adding this one because I really think it's really necessary. What do you call the last letter of the English alphabet? It's a Z. Now come on, it's a Z. Almost all Canadians under 30 are now saying Z because, of course, they grew up with Sesame Street. That taught them that it's Z. No, it's Z, and it's time for us Canadians to take back the Z. Take back the Z. Take back the Z!